dream's breath, flying high, defying death. Every cloud's my stair to climb, reality's a fleeting mind. I see gold in a field of gray, the world bows to my ballet. Delusional delusion is my superpower, turning seconds into an endless hour. I'm the king of make-believe, what I dream I can achieve. Oh yes, I'm spinning towers. Delusional delusion is my superpower. I paint the moon with a wink of my eye, pull the stars down, let them lie. Every no becomes a yes, a stubborn mind in chaos dress.
Welcome to Delusion, where delusion is our superpower. I am your host, Zelmae, taking you on this journey of, as we talked about, restarting and starting over, and how do we do it. Last week we talked about keeping up with the Joneses. This week we're talking about why are you hanging with them. And of course, I had to be joined by a special guest, a very special person in my life. It is my brother, Dr. Chase. How are you doing today, Dr. Chase?
Good. How are you, Trevor?
I am good. We have a great show lined up for y'all. Make sure you like and subscribe if you like the content. If you don't have to like and subscribe. Hopefully this episode helps you deal with any of the issues you have, as well as the other episodes of Delusional. Prequel is starting over. First episode is keeping up with the Joneses. And these episodes kind of intertwine. We got different guests and different people. But Dr. Chase, we need your expertise in this area on why are you hanging with them. Whether this come from, this is talking about your circle and how people look down on you if you hang out with a certain group of people, and if you can outgrow the people you have been around, and how do we deal with that. What's your thoughts on why are you hanging with them?
I think it's an important topic. Sometimes, just as we're social animals, we get a lot of reinforcement from the people that we hang around, and we really just need connection. And sometimes it's hard, even if it's hard to break that connection, even if it's not the healthiest group or people that don't necessarily allow us to move forward. So I think it's a really important topic to talk about, because it's important to all of us, and it matters to all of us. And connection, if you look at research about the importance of connections and a friend group and the people around you, there's a lot that really talks about how they can help you move forward with the right groups, or if you really don't have a group, how you can kind of stay stuck, and it can lead to depression, anxiety. An epidemic of loneliness is out there. So it's a big topic.
Yeah. And why are you hanging right there? I want to tell a light story before we get deeper into the subject of when I was younger. It was this kid who people viewed a certain type of way. He looked different. He wasn't social. He was awkward. And all I did was sit with him. I sat with him, didn't say words, didn't converse, just sat with him. And people would ask this question, why are you sitting with him? You can sit with the athletes, the basketball players, you can sit with the kids who do play Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever, or you can play with the football team with your own. Why do you sit with him? It wasn't every day. It just every once in a while. Our lunches didn't match all the time. But 2015, 6-7 years later, he came up to me as I worked at Walmart and said, you sitting with me might have saved my life. And those little things like that, you don't know the effect you have. A simple smile, a simple just sit with without even conversing. You think, oh, I didn't talk to him, so it might not mean that much. But little things like that mean a lot. So when people ask you where do you sit, or why do you hang out with people, why do you do what you do, those little things can be very important in that type of environment.
Yeah, I agree. I think it matters quite a bit. I think kindness matters. I do a lot of work related to character and social emotional learning, and I was talking about connection. And so that story kind of reiterates that you really don't know what somebody's going through, and how even a simple gesture of kindness or spending time with them can make a difference in how they see themselves and how they really engage with other people. And I think that it's important for us to really talk about that I work with kids. So I think it's important to talk about that with young people, especially with the influx of just kind of a focus on social media and socialization through that realm. And in those norms, we have a lot of back and forth, a lot of kind of negativity in certain aspects of social media. There's a lot of bullying nowadays. So I think that really taking the time to just see a person as who they are, to reinforce the idea of kindness and just kind of really building connections with different types of people is really, really valuable and important and really necessary for just a strong, just quality society and a culture.
Yeah, I honestly do, because like I said, little things you don't never know. So that statement always stuck out. That's why I wanted to name this topic. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because I know what I'm talking about. I thought of this story and I'm like, who handles a situation like this? Doctor, my brother. But those things like that, and then it can happen the opposite way too. Sometimes you can outgrow people. Why are you still hanging with them? Why are you still in those circles that are not helping you grow? Why are you still in those environments that's not keeping you stronger, encouraging you in certain ways?
And I think that matters too. I think it's just really knowing yourself, and really knowing where you want to go is important with that. Because like we talked about, having that connection is key, but connection helps us move forward. The people that we're around give us advice. They help give us certain types of direction. And if we're around people that really aren't moving us in the direction of kind of a hopeful, joyous, fulfilling life, then often they'll kind of hold us back. And not on purpose. I don't want to say people are purposely holding us back in certain types of situations, but you have to really know who you are and where you want to go. And our social circles play a big role in how we get there. So we want to stay in certain circles because we're connected, and I think that's valuable and important to remember. Connection is really key, but there's different levels of connection that you can have with people. You know, you have very close friends. You might have people who might be called more of an associate, or people that you kind of hang out with in different ways. And it's okay to have, in my opinion, it's okay to have different levels of connection and levels of friendship, depending on kind of where you're moving to, where they are, and really where you want to go.
But Thor's good energy, by the way. He's great energy.
Oh yeah, he's moving around.
Yeah, so it's a great energy. I'm not used to seeing him in that area, but it's hilarious to me. But speaking of that, that's a segue to my topic. What about the energy audit? The unaligned friends, you feel drained, not inspired by your friends. Your conversations stay surface level. Or negative. You can't celebrate without feeling judged. Basically, everybody can't go where you're trying to go. Sort of feel uninspired by the environment you have set up.
Well, I think that's important to remember. I think it kind of goes back to what we're saying about even just kind of knowing yourself, right? I think a lot of us don't really know who we are, or have really explored just kind of where we want to go and the type of person that we want to be. And I think that just kind of comes from, and we'll talk more about this, your core self, right? So the more I'm aware of my beliefs, my values, faith-based types of things, if that's kind of where you are, the more I know about that part of myself, the more I can think about or really analyze the things in my life that align with that. There's some people who align with where you are at a certain time, and if you move forward or you're learning and growing, that alignment might not necessarily be there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just growth, right? And you appreciate the time that you had together. You don't necessarily negate it or just kind of blame them for being who they are and where they are. You just have to recognize that that maybe moving in a different direction, or surrounding yourself with people who can help you move forward, or even kind of see things a little bit differently at times, or expand your view. We always talk about kind of diverse thoughts, or people who can kind of help you think differently and grow differently, and really see the world differently allows you to grow. And just an awareness of people that are allowing you to grow, and people who may not be facilitating that growth is a good thing. And it can be complicated to recognize that, and you don't want to lose someone, but you also don't want to stay in a place where you're making choices and you can't move forward, and then you ultimately resent that person long term. So that doesn't create healthy relationships either. And there's a lot of people who kind of resent the people around them, and they get angry about them or are mad at them, and they blame them, when a lot of the things that we do are choices that we make. You have a choice of the people that you surround yourself with. We have agency. And I think it's important to remember that agency as we're building friend groups or changing friend groups or kind of moving in between different groups in our lives. That's really key, and that's really important. You have a choice in who you surround yourself with and the energy that you are receiving.
It's this was, I had that same idea, and the idea came from good energy, but at the same time, unalignment can be interesting in a way, right? I saw something on it was a Joe Budden podcast versus the Native Heritage podcast, I think it's called, with Angela Rye. Excuse me if I'm getting it wrong. But they were saying that Dr. Mark Lamont, was on the Joe Budden podcast, and he's listening to himself being on that said podcast. They basically saying he's unaligned, but he stated that he feels aligned with them because it gets to show people a more natural side of him, not just the intellectual side. And I was wondering about those boxes that we put each other in, that we put ourselves in, whether it's cliques in high school or groups that we automatically naturally put ourselves in, and how we connect, but also how we can also disconnect from that. I'm an intellectual. I hate that word. I hate calling yourself something, but it's naturally, people like to put themselves in a group. Or I'm an athlete, or I'm something else. That interesting connection between, we place ourselves in these boxes, and again, why are you hanging with them type of deal with that?
Well, I think, like you said, it's a natural, we try to make sense out of the world. So that's why people put people in boxes, or you might say that this group of people always do that type of thing, right? Or they do that. You just kind of see, we have certain types of biases. We have certain types of, we have generalizations about groups. And even if we are part of that group, we might think that about ourselves or other people in that group, right? So kind of seeing yourself as an intellectual, my question is, what does that really mean? We're all complex in different ways. We have different IQ levels. We have different backgrounds, where some of us are artistic. Some of us are athletic in different ways. Some of us can cook. Some of us are better, all of these different elements to who we are. And I think it's really important to, when you're talking about an individual, to recognize that you have multiple identities, right? So we were raised in the same way. We look the same. We have similar accents, you know what I mean? But we are different people because of biology and because of just kind of our experiences and just kind of who we are. So I think someone else telling you kind of where you should go and what you should do is very limiting. And I think people tend to do that, especially in social media and society today. They want to put you in a box. And of course, that's their right to say that. But I think it's really important as an individual to know that no one can control what you do, what groups you're around, who you hang around. And the more we let kind of outside people dictate those decisions, the less authentic we are. And it also limits our ability to connect with other people, to see different sides of the story. I think one of the things that's very limiting in our society today is that we're not open to different perspectives and ideas. I wrote this series called, I think I told you about it, My Opinion Doesn't Matter and Neither Does Yours, right? Because it's just an opinion. They come from a lot of different factors, but we've kind of gotten to the place where we think that ours is the right one. And my big question was is where does that come from? And why do I need to be right or to be just with this group or in this box to feel okay? So it kind of goes back. I know that was a long way to kind of get to your question, but I do think there's a danger to external social validation or just kind of external factors telling me who I need to be. I think society does that. The internet does that. People do that. And it limits our ability to grow and connect. And if we're constantly hanging out with people who say the same types of things, how do I actually learn something? right?
Shout out to Angela Rado. She said she didn't want to come off of that. She wanted to help Black people, and a lot of people felt offended because, of course, you're telling a certain group of people to act a certain type of way, and people already perceive people in a certain way, especially if people say they're intellectual. They're like, what does that mean? Are you saying you're better than me? You're smarter than me? And that the thing was, Mark should be on CNN and not on the Joe Budden podcast. That's not a point. That's just a point I was thinking about just watching it. And it's a lead up to my second one, is a guilt-free growth. And why do people struggle to walk away from unhealthy relationships? Not saying his relationship with his friends is unhealthy, but how him not going on that podcast, but going on the Joe Budden podcast, which is less serious, but he gets a chance to talk to a different audience and talk how it can be guilt-free. So it can build like a more healthy relationship with an audience that might not normally hear him and see him more as a normal person with a group of people that seem to generally like him. I don't know those personal situations.
Well, I think that kind of just goes even like the thing that you talked about at the very beginning, that scenario. Somebody might appear to be different, or they might have a different friend group, or they kind of maybe are someone that we wouldn't typically hang out with, and you just kind of assume that we have nothing in common, right? Because I see myself as an athlete, or I see myself from this part of town, or for this particular race or background, or those types of things. And a lot of the issues that we have, I think, societally, is because we kind of, again, like put ourselves in these boxes and just kind of say we are one thing. Now, of course, all those things are important. They're valuable. They tell our story, and we want to celebrate our differences and the things that make us unique. But we also want to do that with other people as well, right? If I never speak to somebody who's different, or somebody who has a different set of experiences, again, I'll never learn about those experiences. I think about this with adult learning. I'm a professor, so I teach my students. I try to be when I'm working with them, it's really important to actually bring down walls when I'm having a conversation with my students. If I stand up and just lecture for an hour, are they really seeing me or understanding where I'm coming from? Are they able to learn from me, or are they just is there a separation from me versus them? I think it's really important, especially with adult learning and working with different people, whether it's consulting or just kind of having even a speech or a professional development. It's important for you to kind of be with that person, right? For them to connect with your words and make your words, or the things that you're doing, relate to them. So if I want to speak to a group, like you're saying, I need to be able to, if I have a message that's valuable, I want to be able to communicate my message to as many people as I possibly can, so that if it's a positive message, if it helps growth, or if it's a healing message, one group or one set of people, or people with a certain IQ shouldn't be the only people who can understand that message, right? A lot of times we'll do things that are very intellectual and higher ed, academia. But if I publish a study that's a good study, I want people, and it can help people, I want to be able to format that in a way that people can actually understand it and use it in their day-to-day lives. It's not just for me, I think that's key to growth and actual change, and actually caring about other people and if they receive the information that you get.
You said something interesting I want to just dive into in your brain. You said sometimes you have to lower your boundaries. And then sometimes, as we stated, sometimes you have to up your boundaries and be like, no, this is my thing. You're not putting me in this group. And then sometimes you have to lower your boundaries to also talk to other people and become approachable, not necessarily be in that group, but be approachable to other people in that group.
Right. What's your goal? So it depends on what my goal and my mission is, right? If I'm speaking to different people, I think about consulting work, I had to really learn that, whether I was an administrator in a school, and the way that you operate as an administrator is very different than the work of a teacher. So the way I was communicating from that place didn't always connect with the teachers or the people who were supposed to receive that. So once I got into consulting and training and coaching, I realized that the way I was communicating my message wasn't the best way. It was from my mindset, but the people that were meant to receive it didn't receive it because I structured it in a way that made sense to me, right? So I think about that with communication. When I do training or I have a book on, we talk about communication. Communication is a two-way street, right? There's either delivering information, which I kind of have a little visual on that. I can deliver information, I can just talk and no one receive it, but I can try to engage in communication where I'm delivering a message and someone's able to understand and receive and use what I have. And I think going back to the idea of groups and who we hang around with, I think that's why it's important to really, the more we can engage in effective communication, am I learning something? Am I growing? Is there a true connection, or am I just talking? Are we just talking at each other? The more we break that down and learn those emotional intelligence is associated with that, the better our relationships will be, and the more we can recognize, who we are as a person, and the people that help us grow and pour into us in a healthy way.
And this subject of why do you hang with them? I do want to end it off with this. A lot of times, you said something earlier that I wanted to get back to when we got to the guilt-free section of growth, of growing. How do you? This is kind of interpersonal, so you might have a section of it you want to speak to yourself. How do you know when you have outgrown a person? Because I noticed you said when sometimes you feel frustrated, sometimes you feel angry, and sometimes you feel like they can't grow with you, and that this relationship, this group might not work.
Well, I think it just kind of goes that it's a personal. The more you know yourself, and the more you kind of recognize who you are and who you want to be, you need to develop, or we need to really work on that awareness of, am I getting those needs met? I think about like with mentoring, and that doesn't necessarily mean you leave a friend. If somebody's been a good friend to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are just because they're in a different place and you're in a different place that you're just like, hey, there's nothing there anymore. I think it's just kind of recognizing that, and even seasons, right? I might be in a season in my life where somebody else who has a different perspective or a different experience can kind of pour into me and help me grow and learn and kind of navigate this season, when maybe this other person doesn't have the skill set to do that, or they haven't been in a place to do that, right? I think that kind of comes from not being, some people just aren't in a place to give you what you need. And I think often we get kind of upset with them because they can't do that. But I've kind of gotten to the point to where I see people, I recognize certain parts of them, and maybe they recognize certain parts of me. I can't give everybody what they need at every season, right? But I still care about them. I can still connect with them in certain ways. So I think it's all about how you view relationships, but also how am I able to find individuals or people, because connection is very important. You have to have your people to help you really navigate the world. I think that's natural, and real people, real life conversations, day-to-day types of things to help you process things. So I think it's one of those to where, am I not able to process? Am I not able to navigate situations in my life? And who can I reach out to? Maybe somebody with a certain level of wisdom and experience that maybe a really close friend doesn't necessarily have. That doesn't mean that friend is not a good friend anymore, but that might mean that I'm just in a different spot, right? So I think it's going back to what I can control and what I can't. I can't make somebody else be somebody else, right? I always tell that when I train little kids, or even train teachers with little kids. I can't make a 3-year-old do anything. So that's kind of the first thing that I tell teachers or parents. You can't force somebody to be somebody else, right? So recognizing that, seeing that, knowing who you are helps you make decisions on your relationship, not be bitter about it, but also recognize what you need to do to help you grow and become the person that you really are meant to be.
That is so true. As you're growing, again, this whole thing is about restructuring the way we think, restarting, being okay to reset, because I know a lot of people are fearful. That's what Delusional is. It's a reset on the overall the Keep It 99 channel. It's a reset on the thought process and the content we want to make. but it's also a way to talk about the fears of each thing that we have when it's reset. And this is one of them. Let's say the reframing of cutting people off. Let's reframe it into not just cutting them off as you said, but putting you probably where you properly should be.
Right.
On our like close friends relationship thing. Even though I know it's hard because I really love that person, or I've really been around that person, I've been around them my whole life, and it kind of feels like a betrayal to not be around them anymore. But at this point in my life, I'm moving on the same way as a person who was on drugs or alcoholic can't, when they get out and go to rehab, they can't go back to that. They might still love everybody they was with. It might be family, friend, they still love them, but I can't be in that environment still. Which is gonna be an episode about episode 4, 11 people they are, but
well, yeah, it's kind of one of those things. We try to operate very in either or, right? So a lot of times our thinking is very black and white, and I think kind of cutting people off or just kind of having this, and sometimes you do have to do that just to be healthy. If somebody's really kind of toxic or not allowing you to kind of move forward or kind of pulling you back and just not a really unhealthy situation, you do have to make that choice. But often we kind of are, just because of our responses or just kind of our emotional state, we get in a very either or type of attitude. And I think life is, just personally, I think a lot of things are shades of gray. So I think it's like you said, it's recognizing where I am, recognizing where somebody else is, not necessarily being angry with them for being who they are, not trying to change them, and then recognizing that they don't necessarily have to change you, right? So it's a place where I can see myself, I can see what's going on in the room and the people around me, and just recognize what I need for this moment. And in another part of life, that person may be able to support you, or they can reconnect in a different way, without necessarily making it something that creates a lot of toxicity for you and hurt and anger.
I want to end this with a story. Shout out to my brother, he's right here. I left Mississippi to go to Texas, figure out who I am. And not that I couldn't figure out who I am there, but it was always, like I said, a safety net. It's a net down that I know that if I fall, I will still be safe. So I needed to go somewhere where it wasn't as safe. Still have my sisters, still have people around, but it's not as safe. It's just, I have to be more careful instead of just, I have to climb now. That's the way I want to say it. I had to reframe my mindset. And it wasn't always easy. It was times I wanted to talk to him. It was times I was really sad because I'm used to going 2 hours to see my brother from seeing my mom. I'm used to seeing my auntie, so it's easy. So sometimes you get real down by yourself. And I always didn't want to call my sister and everybody. So I was like, okay, it's your first time you truly on your own. Not because I've been on my own, but it ain't. Now you're really on your own. So that set up the mindset so I was able to grow and figure out, why am I hanging with them? Why am I around them? Why am I in this group? Where do I fit in the world? Because my whole thing has always been simple family, structure, safe, net. Not a bad thing. No one says it's a bad thing, but it's always like, okay, who is Zelmae? Who is Trevor? Who is that person? Who is he when things get hard? Because that seemed to be when you thrive the best and you can understand yourself, because you've been kind of looking for it.
Yeah, I think that's I think everybody's different. You know, we all grow in different ways. We have a different kind of mindset or different needs. So I think it's kind of like you said, it was going to where what I noted earlier, you gotta figure out who you are and kind of what's going to allow you to grow as a person, right? So some people can kind of stay in the same place and do those types of things. Their personalities are able to kind of do that in the same town. Some people need to go to a different space to be able to kind of move in a different direction, right? So I think it's going back to really recognizing what you need, and then knowing that you have, I think I already talked about agency, knowing that you have the choice in how you move forward, no matter what people say and their opinions on certain types of things. Of course, you want to do things in a way that is healthy and you take care of yourself and those types of things. and you want to pray about it and really think about kind of the best decisions and options and choices, but you do have agency there. And I think the more we recognize that I can make a choice to move myself in the direction that I need to go to, and then I can also decide to go back, depending on kind of where I am, or if I learn what I needed to learn. Nothing is necessarily limiting. It kind of goes back to what we talked about before, is that sometimes we can kind of go in the either or. But I think once we recognize, going back to who we are and recognizing kind of what we need, and that our choices lead to something, hopefully, and often difficult ones, or the challenging situations lead to growth. I think that's important to kind of move forward, and that's why it's important to kind of overcome fears and challenge yourself. But it's also recognizing that as I continue to grow, I can grow in different directions, right? And those directions don't have to, they can be in all kinds of places. I can learn and grow, and then I can go and move in this space. I've learned a lot about myself over time. I'm still learning, and I still have choices, and I can grow as a person, but I also need to be in a place where I can constantly reflect, really learn from every day, stay grounded in who I am and who God wants me to be. And, that's my core foundation. I think that's important. And you make decisions based on that. And then you'll surround yourself with people who hopefully allow you to be that and be successful and grow in those parts of yourself. You will really learn to be the person that you want to be.
Been an amazing conversation. I have to let you go. Before we go, got any place where they can find this information?
Okay, you can go to Chase. That's my website. I have all kinds of books and content there. I'm still working on a lot of it. I have a lot of different thoughts and ideas in my head that I keep editing. So you can check it out. I have things on, I worked in special education, school psychology, adult learning. So things on communication, special education, social emotional learning, character ed, all kinds of things. And it's just really practical stuff. So primarily it's written not like as a textbook, but it's written to really just help people make connections with certain concepts and really just kind of open up thoughts and doors to some topics that could be helpful to them in their lives. So check that out. I'm also on social media, just Chase. There might be a couple of us, but I try to post some positive things. And
I want to look like this.
See my face. Yeah.
But thank you for being here. Thank you for this episode. This is another episode of Delusional, where delusion is our superpower. Why are you hanging with them? Episode 2. Thank you for watching. Make sure if you did enjoy the content, you've been here the whole time, like and subscribe, hit that notification bell every Saturday at noon, except for November 28th or 29th. In that area, the Thanksgiving weekend, that Saturday is going to be a 2-parter, one at 11 and one at 1. But every other Saturday at noon, we have the episodes of Delusional. Thank you, Doc, for being here.
Thank you, Mr.
My brother, y'all. All right. Make sure, I know it might be hard out there. I know things might be hard, but be a little bit delusional. Believe in yourself. Obama said it. The only difference between you and the people in those boardrooms is they were taught to believe in themselves. So keep stomping. Something amazing will happen.
All right.
I'm a kite in a hurricane's breath, flying high, defying death. Every cloud's my stair to climb. Reality's a fleeting mind. I see gold in a field of gray. The world bows to my ballet. Delusional delusion is my superpower, turning seconds into an endless hour. I'm the king of make-believe. What I dream I can achieve. Oh yes, I'm spinning towers. Delusional delusion is my superpower. I paint the moon with a wink of my eye. Pull the stars down, let them lie. Every no becomes a yes. A stubborn mind in a chaos dress.